When this Filipino Elvis walked onto the stage, nobody expected what happened next. The judges froze, the audience stopped breathing, and Simon Cowell, yes, Simon, was left speechless. One final note changed everything. If you think you've seen it all, think again. This performance rewrites AGT history, backstage at the world's most electrifying talent stage. America's Got Talent. The air feels charged, like a storm is hiding somewhere behind the bright lights and booming applause. Crew members rush from one side to another, headsets crackling with instructions. Performers rehearse in corners, some whispering prayers, others pacing like caged lions. But among all this chaos, one man stands completely still. Marco de la Cruz, a 25-year-old Filipino singer with slick jet-black hair and a vintage black leather jacket, is staring down at a small, worn photograph held gently between his trembling fingers. The picture, slightly faded from years of being carried in pockets, shows a young Marco sitting on the lap of his grandfather, the man responsible for igniting the spark that led him to this very moment. His grandfather, Lolo Ernesto, was a street musician in Tondo, Manila. He played old classic rock songs on a battered guitar for neighborhood kids who had too much story and too little hope. Every afternoon, little Marco sat beside him, listening to Elvis Presley tracks on a cheap speaker, dreaming in secret about stages bigger than the cramped alleyways where they lived. Marco hears his grandfather's voice so clearly, it almost feels like Ernesto is standing beside him now. "Anak, don't just sing, make them feel something." That line stayed with him through every small-town performance, every karaoke contest, every heartbreak, every rejection. And now, after years of scraping money together, performing on cruise ships and singing at restaurants, he is finally here, on the biggest stage in the world. But even now Marco is shaking. Not from fear of failure, he's used to that. He's shaking because he knows he isn't doing this alone. This performance is a promise, a tribute, a love letter to the man who believed in him even when the world didn't. A soft knock on the backstage wall snaps him out of his thoughts. A cheerful producer enters with a clipboard. "Hey Marco, you're up in 30 seconds, you ready?" Marco swallows hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "As ready as I'll ever be." But the producer doesn't leave. She studies him for a moment, noticing the photograph in his hand, the slight tremor in his fingers, the way he keeps glancing toward the stage entrance like it's the edge of a cliff he might fall off. She smiles gently. "Nervous?" Marco laughs nervously. "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who cares," she says with a wink. "But trust me, your look, your voice, your story, the audience will love you." Marco nods, but his breath feels shallow. He tucks the photograph safely into the inner pocket of his jacket, close to his heart. He whispers under his breath, as if speaking to his grandfather, "Lolo, this is for you." The hallway leading to the stage is narrow and dimly lit, but the light spilling from the main stage is blinding. Each step Marco takes feels heavier than the last. The sound of the current performer fades away, replaced by the beating of his own heart. He rubs his palms against his jacket, trying to ground himself. Then he hears it, the crowd cheering, a final burst of applause, and then silence. His cue. A stage manager approaches him with a headset and clipboard. "Marco de la Cruz? Follow me." He nods and follows, every muscle in his body tightening with adrenaline. The moment he reaches the wings of the stage, the reality hits him all at once, the crowd, thousands strong, buzzing with energy. The judges seated at their table, the massive AGT logo glowing like a beacon, the cameras swooping overhead, capturing every detail. Marco closes his eyes and forces himself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. "Okay," the stage manager whispers. After the door opens, "Step to your mark. Introduce yourself. Be natural. Be confident." Confidence. A word easier said than lived. But then Marco remembers the nights when he and his grandfather would practice Elvis songs in their tiny Manila bedroom, pretending their old table fan was a spotlight and their neighbors were a roaring audience. He remembers the joy in Ernesto's laughter, the sparkle in his eyes whenever Marco hit a difficult note. That memory alone steadies Marco's breathing. The giant lead stage doors begin to open with a soft mechanical hum. As the crack widens and the brilliant white light spills through, Marco feels a sudden shift inside him. Those years of dreaming, practicing, struggling, they all merge into one moment, one chance. He steps forward. The sudden burst of applause from the audience feels like a wave crashing over him. The lights blind him momentarily, but when his eyes adjust, he sees the judges clearly. Simon Cowell, the man known for his icy honesty, is leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, expression unreadable but intrigued. Sofia Vergara is smiling already, curious. Heidi Klum tilts her head, studying him, and Howie Mandel offers a warm, encouraging nod. Marco reaches the center of the stage. The spotlight settles on him like a warm blanket. The mic stand gleams beneath his hand. "Hello," he says, voice slightly shaky. "Hi," Heidi chirps. "Welcome to AGT. What's your name?" "Marco de la Cruz," he answers, pulling strength from the memory in his pocket. Sofia leans forward with a bright smile. "Where are you from?" "Originally from Manila, Philippines," Marco says proudly. The audience cheers wildly, Filipino pride echoing through the auditorium. Simon narrows his eyes slightly, not in judgment, but in curiosity. "And what will you be doing today?" Marco grips the microphone tighter. "I will be performing a tribute to someone very important to me, and to someone the world knows very well." The judges glance at one another, intrigued by the mystery. Simon tilts his head. "Okay, whenever you're ready." Marco takes one last deep breath, then another. His fingers brush the photo over his heart. He whispers silently, "This is for you, Lolo. Let the world feel what you felt." The stage lights dim. The crowd hushes. The first sweet strum of an old Elvis track fills the theater. Marco lowers his chin. His posture shifts. His aura changes. In a single heartbeat, the boy disappears, and the legend steps forward. The theater is silent, an almost sacred kind of silence, the kind that only happens in those rare, once-in-a-lifetime moments where the entire world seems to hold its breath at the same time. Marco stands alone in the spotlight, the golden glow outlining the silhouette of his Elvis-inspired look, slicked-back hair, polished boots, and a vintage jacket that pays homage to the king himself without feeling like a costume. Behind him, the giant LED screens shimmer with a soft amber hue, evoking the nostalgic warmth of a 1960s stage. The audience is a sea of anticipation, thousands of people leaning forward, eyes locked on him. Up front, the judges prepare for what they assume will be a simple tribute act. No one, not a single person in the room, knows what's about to happen. The music begins with a low, mellow guitar strum. Marco lowers his head slightly, breathing in the rhythm, letting it flow through him. His foot taps once, twice, and then he lifts his gaze. The moment his eyes rise, something changes, something subtle, something electric. He steps closer to the mic, and then he sings. The first note emerges, deep, rich, smooth, and soul-soaked, a voice so shockingly close to Elvis Presley that the judges freeze instantly. It's not just similarity, it's resonance. It's spirit. It's the unmistakable timbre of someone who doesn't just imitate Elvis, but channels him. The entire auditorium is stunned into stillness. Simon Cowell, who has heard thousands of singers across decades, snaps his head upward. His brows lift, his lips part. He actually stops breathing for a second. That alone is a reaction more dramatic than any buzzer slam. Sofia's eyes widen, sparkling in disbelief. Heidi's jaw drops open slightly, and Howie leans so far forward he looks like he's going to fall out of his chair. The camera zooms in on Marco's face. His expression isn't forced or theatrical. He sings with a mixture of passion, hurt, and nostalgia. Every note feels like it comes from somewhere deep inside him, somewhere real. He glides into the second verse, easing into the signature Elvis vibrato. But then, he surprises everyone. Marco adds his own twist, a modern, soulful run that Elvis never sang but would have admired. The crowd reacts instantly. Gasps, cheers, scattered applause, not loud but involuntary, like the audience is reacting to magic they didn't expect. Marco doesn't break character. He moves with a confidence and finesse that doesn't mimic Elvis. It reimagines him. The slight shoulder roll, the subtle knee bend. Every gesture is intentional but natural, flowing out of him like muscle memory. He steps forward, gripping the mic with more passion. The cameras shift. The spotlight intensifies, the music swells, and then he hits the first powerful note. It rises, smooth at first, then bold, then amplified by the echo of the hall. The note glides effortlessly, floating like a ribbon across the audience. People gasp. Sophia places her hand over her heart. Heidi looks at Simon, searching his face for confirmation that this is real. Howie shakes his head in awe. Even the camera operators, usually steady and composed, whisper to each other off mic. Marco feels the energy shift. He closes his eyes for a moment and remembers the promise he made to his grandfather. The memory gives him strength, a flickering flame that grows brighter with every second of the performance. He leans into the chorus, pouring his soul into each word. The room vibrates with raw emotion. And then it happens. The line comes that he and his grandfather used to practice late at night. The line Marco always knew he would one day sing on a stage far bigger than they could imagine. He hits it perfectly, a smooth blend of power and vulnerability. The audience explodes in applause, but Marco isn't done. He transitions into the bridge, and his voice thickens with emotion. For the first time, a tear almost escapes, but he holds it back, channeling that emotion into the music. His hands move gracefully, guiding the rhythm like a conductor controlling an orchestra of memories. The LED screen behind him shifts to soft golden lights that flicker like candle flames. It looks like the universe is glowing behind him. Then comes the moment everyone will remember. The final sequence, the climax, the note that becomes the heartbeat of the entire performance. Marco prepares mentally, breathing in, grounding himself, remembering his grandfather's voice. Don't imitate the king, become the music. He opens his eyes, and he sings the final note. It begins strong, confident, steady, then it climbs, higher than Elvis ever recorded, a bold choice that only a few singers on earth could even attempt. The crowd quiets instantly. The judges lean forward. The tension in the room tightens like a rope pulled from both ends. Marco pushes harder. His voice soars, holds, then rises again and again. It becomes a ringing, powerful, breathtaking note that reverberates through the air like a church bell. 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 12 seconds, still holding. People rise to their feet, shouting, clapping, screaming in disbelief. Marco's face tightens, pure passion, pure effort. His hand grips the mic like he's holding on to his dream with every ounce of strength. Finally, after a staggering 15 seconds, he releases the note softly, letting it fall like a gentle whisper. And then, silence. A stunned, heavy, heart-crashing silence. Marco stands there, chest rising and falling, sweat glistening on his forehead, eyes shining with emotion. And then, the explosion. The entire auditorium erupts at once. Cheers, screams, standing ovations from all corners of the room, people waving their arms, jumping, shouting his name. Heidi covers her mouth in shock. Sophia screams, "Oh my God!" Howie claps above his head. But the real moment, the one that will go viral worldwide, is Simon Cowell. He sits frozen for a few seconds, stunned, silent. His eyebrows raised, his mouth slightly open, his eyes locked on Marco like he's looking at something impossible. He slowly stands, hands in the air, a full standing ovation. The cameras catch his expression perfectly, complete disbelief mixed with pure admiration. Marco, overwhelmed, tries to breathe. He looks out at the audience, at the judges, at the confetti cannons waiting above. His heart pounds so hard it feels like it might burst. He wipes a tear from his eye. He did it. He made them feel something. And the world will never forget this performance. The final note still seems to linger in the air long after Marco releases it. Like the entire auditorium is suspended in time, unsure how to return to reality. Marco stands center stage, chest rising and falling, his heart in a full sprint. His fingers gently loosen around the microphone as though he's afraid that setting it down might break the magic he just created. The arena is completely still for a split second. Then, it happens. A deafening eruption of applause blows through the theater like a shockwave. Thousands of people leap to their feet at once. Screams, cheers, whistles, stomps, you name it. The room becomes a living, roaring ocean of energy. The applause is so overwhelming that Marco briefly steps back, stunned by the sheer force of it. Above him, stage lights flare brighter, catching the shimmering edges of the crowd. The cameras pivot toward the judges' table, capturing the exact moment millions of viewers will replay again and again. Simon Cowell is frozen, not his usual raised eyebrow, not his smirk, not even his tough, skeptical look. He looks genuinely speechless. His eyes are locked on Marco like he's witnessing a miracle unfold right in front of him. For a moment, Even the audience seems aware of Simon's silence. People start pointing at him, laughing in disbelief. Marco, breathing heavily, tries to smile, but he's still lost in the whirlwind of emotions: relief, disbelief, joy, and something deeper, something sacred. He can almost hear his grandfather's gentle voice echoing in his heart. That's it, anak. Let them feel. Sofia Vergara is the first judge to break the spell. She jumps up from her seat, clapping wildly with both hands above her head. "That was unbelievable," she shouts, her voice cracking from excitement. "Hey!" Daiklum follows immediately, smiling so brightly that she looks like she's glowing under the stage lights. She raises her hands high and cheers with genuine adoration. "How is that even possible?" she exclaims. Howie Mandel is standing too, shaking his head in pure astonishment. "No way," he mutters. "No way someone sounds that good live." Marco looks at each judge, one by one. Their excitement, their shock, their raw amazement, it all hits him at once. His lips tremble, his eyes fill with meaning, but all attention shifts back to Simon. The cameras zoom in. The crowd quiets down. A soft wave of anticipation moves through the room like a hush before a thunderstorm. Simon slowly leans forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped under his chin. He's still silent. He takes a long breath, processing the performance he just witnessed. Finally, he stands. The audience screams again, louder than before. A standing ovation from Simon Cowell is one of the rarest sights on television, and everyone knows what it means. Marco covers his mouth with his hand, disbelief written all over his face. Simon begins to speak, slowly, carefully, choosing his words with uncharacteristic softness. "Marco," he starts, voice steady but full of weight, "I have judged this show for many years, and I've heard countless Elvis tributes. Frankly, most of them sound like imitations." He pauses and gestures lightly toward Marco. "What you did tonight was something else." The room goes silent again, hanging on to every syllable. Simon continues, "You didn't just copy Elvis, you captured his soul, and then you added your own. You created something new." Marco's eyes fill with tears. His hands tighten around the microphone. This moment is worth every sacrifice he's ever made. Sofia jumps back in, unable to hold her excitement. "That was the best Elvis performance I have ever heard," she says, emphasizing each word. "You honored him in the most beautiful way." Heidi nods enthusiastically. "You were like a time machine. You brought us back in time, but you also made it modern and fresh. It was absolutely magical." Howie adds, "This is what AGT is all about. When someone comes on stage and does the impossible, you're more than a tribute performer, you're an artist." Marco feels emotion swell in his chest. He takes a moment to steady himself before speaking. "This means everything to me," he says softly. "My grandfather, he introduced me to Elvis when I was little. We used to sing together in our small home. He always told me that one day I'd share this voice with the world." He places a hand over his jacket pocket where the worn photograph lies. This was for him. The audience lets out a collective awe, touched by the sincerity in his voice. Sofia fans her face dramatically to keep from tearing up. Heidi presses one hand to her heart. Howie nods solemnly. But Simon's eyes narrow slightly again, this time not in doubt but in deep emotion. Something in Marco's words triggers a personal resonance. Then Simon shifts his attention to the golden buzzer. The quietest gasp ripples through the room. Marco's breath catches in his throat. The judges lean in. The audience falls silent again. Simon steps forward and places a hand on the golden buzzer. "Marco," he says, "I think your grandfather would be incredibly proud." Marco's legs nearly give out. And then, slam! Simon brings his hand down on the golden buzzer with absolute conviction. A massive explosion of golden confetti bursts into the air, raining down like a shimmering storm. The audience erupts into absolute chaos, cheering, screaming, crying, celebrating. The room glows with dazzling gold as lights flicker and music swells triumphantly. Marco drops to his knees, overwhelmed. Tears, Saint, ream down his face. He lifts his gaze upward, watching the confetti fall like blessings from above. Stagehands rush to the corners to capture every angle. Cameras zoom in on his emotional collapse, on the judges celebrating, on the crowd chanting his name. "Marco! Marco! Marco!" Sofia rushes to the front of the judges' table, waving excitedly. Heidi wipes tears from her eyes. Howie pumps his fist in the air. Simon stands calmly, arms crossed, a proud smile tugging at his lips, the smile of a man who knows he just discovered something extraordinary. Marco rises slowly, golden flakes clinging to his hair, jacket, and eyelashes. He places a hand over his heart, overwhelmed by the magnitude of it all. He looks toward the sky. "Thank you, Lolo," he whispers. "This is more than a performance, more than a tribute, more than a dream come true." This is the moment Marco Dela Cruz becomes a legend on the AGT stage.